Hello and welcome. If you haven't already, I invite you to please click subscribe. There's no obligation, and it allows you to be notified of all new chapters. Additional information about the story, including the author, chapter warnings, and rating, can be found in the description below. All credit goes to the original author. Bleeding Skies by Orphan Account. Chapter 4. The Hurt. After a long, deafening silence, Scott is the first to move, heat surrounding him as he lies unmoving on the desert ground. It takes him quite some time to wake up, remembering slowly what had happened and why he's here like this. Dazed, the Alpha crawls up, shaking his head slightly as he pushes his hands against his ears. A loud ringing protrudes his skull, deafening his ears. He comes to realize quickly that he was out of the count for quite some time, and that now, as he awakens, the silence is shattered by a constant harsh tone. Slowly, the sound is replaced by a numbing, throbbing pain. He's finally able to move. As he sits up and looks down, he sees blood all over himself. A piece of shrapnel has pierced his side, another one has gone right through his arm. Carefully, wincing, he pulls the remaining metal out, holding his hand against the wound as he forces himself to return to reality. Finally, he remembers it all. He is not alone. Next to him, Derek stirs at long last, lying on his back with his face turned to the right. As soon as he blinks, he also groans at once, clutching at his head. Scott realizes he hears the exact same sound as he does. "Frack, that hurts," the older wolf mumbles when the pain subsides inside his head, sitting up gently as he rubs his legs and scans his own body for injuries. A piece of glass had embedded itself into his arm. He pulls it out himself and throws the bloodied piece on the ground. His ankle is broken, which he twists with a sickening sound into position again. He doesn't even realize he also broke his wrist until he starts using his hand. Scott resets the bones with a quick, swift haul before standing up to search for the others. Derek follows as soon as he's able to stand on his broken ankle and curses under his breath. For a second, he actually believes he's on fire, as the heat that threw them to the ground radiates so much his entire form seems to feel it. Flames of fire rise high up to the skies, scattering every last bit of the vehicle they went to investigate and its drivers. Halfway down the hill, Liam and Malia look up, both dazed but unharmed. Liam helps Malia up, quickly checking her for injuries. She smiles weakly, nodding that she's okay. But she shouts when her eyes catch the two people who still haven't moved yet, at the exact same time Scott and Derek hurry towards them too. Stiles and Lydia are still down for the count. Lydia is lying on her belly, face resting on the surface, her long hair covering most of her shoulders. Stiles lies on his side, somehow on top of her, half of his body and arm protectively resting over her. As the rest of the pack approaches, Lydia suddenly looks up, half lying underneath Stiles. Terrified, she tries to move away from underneath him, trying to free herself from his dead, unmoving weight. Her face bleeds. One of her ears has blood coming out of it. Derek helps her by gently pushing Stiles' weight away from her while holding him, then rolls him back, too afraid to hurt his unconscious form. Lydia leans into Scott's arms, holding on tight as he scans her body for injuries. Gently, he prods her head, trying to figure out if she has a concussion or worse. She pushes him away, staring terrified at Stiles. Her head throbs and her ears ring like crazy, but she doesn't care. Stiles is lying on his side, eyes closed and head bloodied, one arm underneath him and the other resting over his chest. Still, he hasn't moved. "Stiles!" Lydia calls out, crawling towards him. The group focuses on the unmoving human, gently trying to figure out how bad he's hurt. Derek sits behind him, holding him by the shoulders gently. Liam stands awkwardly, seeking out Scott as he doesn't know what to do. As Malia kneels down and cups his face, Stiles suddenly opens his eyes, staring straight at them all. Immediately, he tries to move, his eyes showing his panic. "Stiles, don't move," Scott says, holding him down. "Let me check if you're okay first." "I'm fine," comes out of Stiles' mouth, his voice so raw it startles Malia. Slowly, his pupils are able to focus again. "What happened?" Again, that raw voice, betraying there's something off. "The car blew up," Derek says behind him, his hand still gripping Stiles' shoulders, supporting him gently, his hand sensing the pain and hurt inside Stiles' body. "Can you try and sit up?" Scott asks, unable to find more injuries, apart from the blood on Stiles' face. Derek catches Scott's gaze and slightly shakes his head. "Something's wrong, but I don't know what it is." The human nods and moves awkwardly into an upright position, helped by Derek and Malia. Relieved, Lydia exhales, pushing back the sense something's terribly wrong. But as her eyes find Derek's, she knows that she's spot on. Stiles grins painfully as he tries to stand on quivering legs. The heat behind them feels suffocating. He has trouble breathing properly. "I'm okay," he exhales, and then he stops speaking altogether. Before he manages to stand upright, Stiles' chest seems to explode. An excruciating pain rushes through him, and he doubles over, clutching his upper chest with his left arm, while his right one dangles uselessly next to him. He screams out in pure agony, piercing the strange desert silence and the sound of flames rising up to the skies. Next to him, the pilot lies dead on the ground, his eyes wide open as he stares into nothingness. "Stiles!" Scott cries out, scrambling to catch his best friend as he falls back to the ground. Scott's hands grab him tight before his head collides with the hard ground. Lying half on his back, half on his side, his face contorted by extreme pain, Stiles screams out again so loudly it pierces Scott's ears for the second time. He shuts his eyes, forcing back tears of pain. The others stare, shocked at the teenager lying crying from pain on the hard desert ground. They've never seen him like this before. Stiles can barely move, barely breathe, and holds his left hand and arm tightly over his chest. His right arm is still useless. "Stiles, what's wrong? Where do you feel pain?" Lydia tries to move their friend on his back to take a better look at him, but he refuses, panting and heaving as soon as she touches him. Then Scott is there too, gently touching his chest as he tries to get his best friend to speak. His hands prod Stiles' chest gently, trying to find the cause of the pain. Derek does the same, pulling up Stiles' shirt until the teenager's stilled form stops him. Stiles refuses to move his hand and arm, clutching his chest so tight they know they can't see what's wrong. Liam stands beside the group, using his shadow to protect Stiles' face and upper body from the sun. Malia sits behind Stiles next to Derek, gently rubbing her boyfriend's back as Scott and Lydia try to figure out what is wrong with him. Stiles is completely out of it from sheer pain, panting and muttering without making any sense. No matter how hard Derek tries, he's unable to fully explore Stiles' chest. "Stiles, can you hear me?" Scott asks worriedly, as tears well in Lydia's eyes, and Malia leans startled back against a Derek who supports her protectively. She's at a loss, unable to figure out how much pain Stiles is going through. Everyone's still pretty dazed, eyes and ears still softly ringing from the blast and aching all over. They're at a loss about what to do next, staring in shock at Stiles' traumatized form. He's very much awake, but lying so still now that Scott knows his mind retreated into himself, protecting him from the excruciating pain radiating from his chest. "Stiles, it's us," Lydia says softly, cupping his face and then resting her hand on his left hand, rubbing it gently as she tries to soften the strain he's under. "Nod if you can hear." To their great relief, he nods immediately. Beads of cold sweat form on his face, his eyes open halfway as he fights against the excruciating pain paralyzing him. His legs are pushed together, almost in a fetus-like position. His back and shoulders are so tensed up, Derek can see every muscle underneath his blue t-shirt. He's sweating, as they all are. Lydia almost wishes Stiles would just pass out. A large piece of metal lies beside him, having caused the impact to his chest. Derek notices the dent in his body through Stiles' t-shirt where the object struck him. His mind tries to calculate the damage. Broken ribs, perhaps even broken sternum, lung problems, and who knows what else. Why didn't we listen to him? The wolf is upset this is happening. He's pissed off, angry at himself and the pilot for deciding to take a look, despite Stiles' wish not to do so. "Is he going to be okay?" Malia asks frantically, placing her hand carefully in Stiles' neck, caressing his hair. His eyes remain closed as he lies on his side, his chest shivering despite the sun's heat. "Why isn't he talking?" she asks frantically. "Just let him focus on his breathing for now," Derek gently says, placing his hand on Stiles' forearm, shocked at the radiating pain that escapes from his body. Then he finds Scott's eyes, who is sensing the exact same thing. He's in pretty bad shape. "We have to get him out of here quickly," Scott nods. "This heat isn't helping much either." "How? The pilot's dead." Derek nods at their pilot. A large shard of metal protrudes from the man's chest, the car's metal entering his body so fast and with such force he probably didn't even know what hit him. He was dead before he hit the ground. Scott wearily tries to figure out what to do as he realizes the consequences of this. None of them can fly that plane. They're stuck out here, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded only by hills and sand. "If we can't get out of here, then we need to get help here fast," Lydia says, her eyes warning the rest this is serious. She feels death hang above them, waiting to strike hard. "How bad is it?" Liam asks, feeling helpless at the sight of Stiles' pale face. "From the looks of it, I think he might have broken a couple ribs, perhaps a sternum too, but I'm thinking punctured lung," Scott replies calmly, realizing he has to keep himself restrained from shouting out loud. His hands gently examine Stiles' chest, trying to find wounds, which he luckily doesn't. Then they continue exploring the rest of his body, touching his legs and feet gently for further injuries. No broken legs, ankles, or feet. His shoulders seem to be hurting too, but I think it's because of the lung. I'm not sure though, I'm not a doctor. Everything's just a guess as it is. Lydia's fingers gently lift Stiles' eyelids, finding two normal pupils staring back at her. "I don't think he has a concussion, and he seems quite alert," she says, relieved. "Stiles, did you bump your head? Can you talk to us? Where does it hurt? Is it your shoulder or your chest?" Stiles opens his eyes wide, staring up at his friends, shivering in pure pain, teeth clattering as he tries to speak. No bump. Chest hurts." "You broke a few ribs, and I think your lung is punctured," Scott replies calmly and honestly, knowing Stiles would see through lies immediately. "We need to move you to the plane and get you out of the sun, Stiles." No, leave me. Hurts." Stiles takes deep breaths as he speaks. Derek doesn't like the way he breathes. A crackling sound is clearly heard. Moving is dangerous. Punctured lung, I think." His words shock them all. Stiles is trying to figure out himself what is wrong with him, his mind already drawing conclusions of the seriousness of it. "I know, but we can't leave you out here in the heat either," Derek says, firmly taking the lead as he sees the others are too shocked to know what to do next. They're too close to Stiles, fearing anything they will do might kill him. "You'll dehydrate within the hour," Scott explains, "if a sunstroke doesn't get you first. It's too humid and hot out here. This valley is too hot for us to stay long in it, even for the final hours of daytime. Stiles, you know we have to move you." And tonight it will freeze out here, Scott thinks, remembering what their unfortunate pilot had said. Didn't he mention wild animals as well? The Alpha runs his hands through his hair, cursing himself for not listening to Stiles' pleads. If only they had known that death was on that plane with them. As he looks up, he finds Derek staring at him intently, thinking the exact same thing. "We need to move him," the older werewolf says quietly. "Now. Before it's too late."